Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Risa Eldon, and I'm here on behalf of Ivy, a community and business management tool. And we are really looking forward to Mackenzie Maher from Power Digital Marketing joining us this morning. And before we get started, again, we're going to cover how to optimize your content to promote your business. Whether you're a designer, whatever industry you are in, this information will apply to you. But before we get make sure you understand who I am, who Mackenzie is, and a little bit about Ivy and a little bit about Power Digital Marketing. So Ivy is a community and business management tool for designers, really to help you streamline your overall workflow, from proposals to time tracking to receiving online payments to sourcing items with our Ivy product clipper from a vendor's website. We understand the pain points that you face as a business owner, and we want to give you a lot of time back to actually do what you love, which is design. So if you do have questions about Ivy, feel free to connect with me. I'll drop my email in at the end of this session. And I look forward to this session today. So a big thing that we do here at Ivy is we love giving you all the education we can to help you create a really profitable business. So we produce these webinars, which you're on today. And thank you so much for joining us. And I am so excited to introduce Mackenzie Maher and Power Digital Marketing. So Power Digital Marketing is an award-winning agency that helps companies understand digital marketing and realize the opportunity gaps online within their industry. Power Digital specializes in data-propelled digital marketing through their service offerings of, wait for it, social media, content marketing, SEO, paid search, PR outreach, and web development. Through digital innovation and a customized approach, PDM has earned the reputation of being a truly ROI-focused digital marketing agency. And a little bit about our friend Mackenzie here. As a social media strategist, Mackenzie works to develop dynamic strategies and creative content that will help clients grow their organic social presence. With a strong background in writing and marketing and a discerning eye for design, her role at PDM allows her to flex her strongest muscles and indulge her out-of-the-box thinking. Equally happy when creating a witty caption, which is one of the reasons why I asked Mackenzie to join us today, because she's going to be talking about all things captions. The San Diego local and Santa Barbara graduate treats every day as a new opportunity to achieve marketing greatness. And she's pretty awesome at what she does. So without further ado, Mackenzie, I'll let you take over and kind of run through the agenda and what our viewers are going to learn. And make sure that you have a pen and paper out today, because there's going to be a lot of key takeaways. And by the way, the webinar will be recorded via YouTube, and we are happy to send you a recording, but definitely get your pen and paper out. So Mackenzie, I'll let you take over.
Hi guys, thanks for the intro, Risa. I'm super excited to be here. I've got some really great information that I want to share with you guys and really dive into all the incredible strategies, concepts that we can use to optimize your content to promote your business on Instagram. So diving into today's agenda, we're going to be reviewing your brand image, guidelines, voice and personality, audience and community engagement. We'll look at how to speak to them, how to build relationships with them, and then manage your reputation on social. We'll cover key content strategies, content calendar development, crafting captions, different types of content that you can use to promote your business, and then really understanding what content works for your business. Lastly, how to tie everything together is that social ROI. I'll leave you guys with some metrics to monitor the success of your campaigns and to really know how your content is working so you can pivot accordingly. All right, ready to get started?
Awesome.
Perfect. All right. So diving right in here, brand guidelines. So this is very important to establish a brand identity and guidelines for Instagram. It's really all about finding what works for your organization's unique style. And while that may be different across the board, industry, and specific businesses, there are 4 key visual components that go into your brand guidelines. Those would be your logo, your color palette, your brand typography, and then brand imagery. So logo, despite what a lot of people may think, is about a lot more than just color. It's about how you put it to use and where. So outlining this in your guidelines really ensures branding that's easily identified and ensures that your logo is applied the way you intend it. Outline visual examples in your guidelines that really exemplify how you want the size to be applied, color variations, and then just general do's and don'ts here. This allows us to establish consistency and makes graphics easy to identify in the feed as users are scrolling through that really saturated Instagram content. Second one that's really important here is your color palette. Defining a brand palette really goes a long way towards creating a consistent look and feel. You'll see on Instagram, if you look at a few different accounts, it's pretty easy to tell which ones do a good job of keeping a cohesive color scheme and then which ones are kind of all over the place. We want you guys to be really cohesive, which is what this palette is here to serve us for. In terms of what our recommendations are, most brands choose 4 or fewer main colors to stick to throughout their creative content and don't really stray very far from the hues in their logo. That being said, I would probably suggest you pick a light color for backgrounds in any creative content, a darker color for text, and then a neutral hue, and then also one that pops for any content that kind of you really want to catch the attention of your followers. The next one that's a really important component here is your typography. It's a really big part of the identity design. So choosing your font and typeface is something that you want to define in whether you want one typeface or a supporting one. A good rule of thumb is to use a font that's different than what you use in your logo, only because that contrast will really help the written content stand out. So in those brand guidelines that I mentioned, if you do use supporting fonts and multiple font faces here, you want to outline what each one is used for. Is it for a headline, body text, captions, etc.? Lastly, we're going to cover imagery here as a key part of your brand guidelines. When it's your company, you tend to have a natural instinct for which photos you like and gravitate towards and which ones are right for your brand. That being said, I still think it's really important to include an imagery section in your style guide because it helps if you have anyone else touching your social channels and managing your content for you, it'll help steer them in the right direction. Also, even if it's just you handling it, I know a lot of times we can be like, look at an image and want to pull it in just because we think it's like great in that moment. Having this imagery section will help, keep you consistent and serve as a reminder to what type of imagery you should be providing for your users. This section in your brand guidelines can be presented a few different ways depending on what your preference is. One way that some brands do based on how much content they already have is to show examples of images that have performed well for their brand already on social. You could also, if you wanted to kind of pivot your strategy there, you could provide aspirational examples from other big brands that have a good look and feel that you're striving to achieve on social media. So it's more like inspiration there. The third one would be just a general mood board of mixed images that convey the feeling that you want people to get when they interact with your brand. And as a creative community, I know you guys are probably no stranger to the mood board, so that might be a route that you guys prefer to go. From there, once you've got the 1, 2, 3, and 4 logo, palette, typography, and imagery locks down for your brand guidelines, you can dial down further and create an Instagram-specific style guide that you can refer to while posting content to your account. And again, this is just really there as a reference to ensure consistency with your grid's look and feel, and just make sure that those posts are easily recognized in the user's Instagram feed as distinctly your brands. So, and then a fun fact that I just wanted to throw in here, you'll see at the bottom, ensuring brand consistency, this just underscores the importance. Ensuring brand consistency across all your marketing channels has been proven to increase your revenue by an average of 23%. That's no small chunk of change there, so it's definitely something to pay attention to and help underscore the importance here. And then once you have established your brand look, and you can really focus on providing the quality and engaging content that falls within those guidelines. Now, moving on to voice and tone. This is another very important facet of your brand guidelines. It's how you're going to be talking to them or talking to your followers. This is often an overlooked aspect of your overall presence on social media. And that's why I really want to hammer this point home as something that's very foundational as you're starting out, or if it's something that you just haven't really latched onto in your experience on social so far. So we'll just review how you can really firm up what your voice and tone is specific to your business. Your unique brand voice should carry across all respective marketing channels. So let's just look at what this means at a high level first, and then in a few slides we can dive into how it pertains specifically to social. So since your brand voice is ultimately how you're communicating with your customers or potential customers, it's really a core pillar of the overall customer experience. Your brand voice, I really want you guys to look at this as a powerful tool for creating desire on social media. You're creating that content that's aspirational, that connects with people, that builds relationships. And so you want to make sure that your voice reflects that. A few components when you're getting started on establishing that voice is just to look at what are your brand's values, what are your missions, and what are your goals. And that will really help you shape how you want to talk about your brand and to your audience. But in its most effective form, your voice should inspire belief, trust, and ultimately loyalty with your followers. So moving on down here, one thing that we often see clients struggle to define the difference between is voice and tone. So I just want to see if I can clarify that in the best way possible here for you. You really only have one brand voice. So this should always be the same. It's the tone of voice that will change depending on what you're saying, who you're saying it to, the situation, etc. So think about if you're trying to explain floor plan mistakes or faux pas here. If you're explaining that to your child versus to an industry peer versus your grandmother, you're going to take that, those floor plan mistakes and you're going to explain it all three different ways to those three different people because, your child's not going to understand it the same way someone with experience in the industry is. So it would still be you talking and you're delivering the same information. It's just that tone alters based on catered to your audience. So hopefully that makes sense. And then once we've got that established brand voice and tone, the importance of having this set out before we start creating those great captions is because it really builds trust with your audience, allows you to show your personality, which is huge on social. People don't want to talk to a brand, they want to talk to a person. This brand voice and tone will ultimately help engage conversations. And then equally as important is it'll help you rise above the competition because a lot of businesses on social really don't have this established. So moving on here to how to find your brand voice. So this is, something that there's a few different approaches of how you can go about this. Every brand and business will have different answers, but they can really all start with the same questions to help get them closer to finding what that voice looks like. A few key questions that I recommend you using as an exercise in identifying answers here is what adjectives personify your brand voice and tone. An exercise that we have clients run through it sometimes is to pick 10 adjectives that you say, represent who your brand is. And then from those 10, narrow it down to 4. Those 4 you should use as the core of your brand voice. So I included a few examples here, 10 different adjectives to describe all kind of interwoven adjectives about a brand. And then from there, you would want to take 4 of those that you think truly embody who you are. Moving on down, a few more questions here that are important to understand are what are your values as a brand? What makes you different as a brand? That's really important because, you're not the only person doing what you're doing, but there should be a key differentiator that would deter users or that would encourage users to seek you out versus a competitor on social. Furthermore, you want to know what you do and don't want others to say about you. Oftentimes we think about how we want them to perceive us, but forget what we don't want them to look at us like. So that's something that you definitely want to consider as well. Additionally, you want to know how are you improving people's lives? How are you adding value to them? That's a really key component of just social strategy in general is you want to provide value to your audiences. So how are you doing that? And then who are you creating that content for? Why are you on social? You shouldn't be on social without a goal, a purpose, and to know what you're supposed to be communicating to your audiences there. So definitely want to have that established before you just start posting just to post, because at the end of the day, that doesn't really serve a purpose or help anybody. And then one little bullet that I think that is very interesting to think about it, and a lot of people don't realize that this is a really key way to gain insight into your followers, is looking at what tone our audience uses with their followers. So if you're looking at how your audience or target audience is talking to people, engaging in conversations already on social, it'll help you understand the tone and voice that you should use to be communicating with them in ways that is relevant and will really resonate. Then I know that was a lot of information to digest, so just want to do a quick hit list here of some quick tips for any brand voice on social once you've kind of established and answered some of those questions. But ultimately, you just really want to stay true to your platform, the industry, and your unique brand. As I mentioned, authenticity is key here. And it's very easy to identify when brands are trying too hard and not really being true to themselves. So this is a kind of your guiding light here when you're communicating with that brand voice. How you talk to people on LinkedIn is not going to be the same as how you talk to people on Twitter, and it's not going to be the same as how you talk to people on Instagram. So make sure you're applying your brand voice in a tone that makes sense for this platform, Instagram here. Instagram, I'm sure you guys, have noticed this, it's a very lighthearted, fun, and friendly platform. So definitely want to keep that in mind. That being said, you also want to make sure that you're keeping in mind your industry and your brand itself. This might be an extreme example, but if you work in funeral services and you own a mortuary, even though Instagram's that lighthearted platform, you're probably not going to want to lean too heavily into the fun humor angle there. So make sure it's platform specific and true to you, but also keep it through that filter and lens of what you are delivering to your audience. Secondly, avoid jargon is something that I really try to hammer home with clients that we work with. Social media, specifically Instagram, is not the place for jargon. It's not welcome. It's kind of, you talk, it's just not the most effective way to communicate with people, especially if they're not familiar with industry specific terms. So by avoiding jargon, it forces you to be and sound real and human, which is the most effective way of communicating with people on this platform. If you think that you might be getting too industry specific with some of your terminology, try explaining it to someone who isn't familiar. Maybe your mom, your child, someone who's an outsider to this content. If an outsider is able to understand what you're saying, then you can know that you're on the right path to creating content that resonates. Another one that is really important to remind yourself on a day-to-day basis when you're crafting your captions is to emphasize we language, not me language. What that means is just making sure that you're focusing on the audience, not necessarily yourself, because that's how you're going to get them to feel like they're a part of this journey on Instagram. When you use me, you lose a chance to connect with your audience. If it's not immediately apparent through your content that how it relates to your audience, they're going to lose interest and go to another brand that's offering something similar. So always try to reframe your content in a way that still gets your point across, but in a manner that makes your audience feel included, even if they weren't a part of what's conveyed in the caption or the visual content. So for instance, if on a post that you have scheduled, you're tackling, some of your personal design challenges, you can make that captions, today we're tackling one of our personal design challenges, how to incorporate mixed print into a living room. And we want your feedback on how you'd handle mixing X print with Y print. What are your thoughts? Leave it in the captions below. So even though your audience isn't specifically the one who's tackling this challenge, you're inviting them to join part of that journey with you. Additionally, we already went over kind of paying attention to how your audience talks to each other, but that's something that I do want to hammer home as well. You can go on comments, captions, groups, posts, shares, Instagram stories, etc., and just observing how your audience engages with each other there will really help you gain insight into the best way to communicate with them on your own channels. Surprise, delight, engage, and connect leads back to what I keep mentioning about adding that value. So audiences don't want to be talked at, they want to be talked to, and especially on social, they want a connection with a brand. They don't want just information provided to them. So with the surprise, delight, engage, and connect, you really want to let your personality shine through and put a face to your brand. You should give your audience somebody to talk about, not something to talk about. Lastly, just as we did with the brand guidelines, look and feel, we want to do the same thing with the tone of voice guide. Even if you're the only one managing your channels, it's having all this down in writing is something that can help you communicate consistently and help you track any specific applications of your brand voice that you want to use on social. So next, I just wanted to show you guys a few sample captions from social accounts in the design community that I thought were doing a really good job here of talking to their followers and being consistent. Apartment Therapy does a really good job of staying on brand here. On the left is a post that they shared that's really funny, conveys that brand voice, and hits 3 different content buckets in one, which is really hard to do, and I was really excited to find this example. But the first part of the caption tackles that humor aspect of their voice. Then they move into promoting something that they're selling, and then they finish it out with emphasizing the cause that goes behind this promotion. so that it doesn't appear too salesy, and it emphasizes that this is going to a good cause, which will ultimately is a really high engaging strategy on social. On the right is another example from apartment therapy. Again, we see that humor, it's on brand, and then they engage their audience with a question. You know, there's this great photo of this amazing pink castle, and the caption is "Working from home, what about you?" That would get me a double tap, no questions asked. I think it's funny, and it's just kind of like, obviously they're being tongue in cheek, but it still ties back to ultimately what the kind of subject matter of this account is. A few more examples here from JWS Interiors on the right, or on the left. She does includes a CTA and includes enticing words like transform, which appeals to, you know, our audience's love of before and afters. Definitely the design community. I know that followers really appreciate the transformations here. So including words that clue in the follower to what they're about to see if they follow that CTA, which is a click-through action. Will appeal to the audiences there. And then she also showcases industry knowledge by including the tagged handles of where this content is coming from. And then on the right, I really like that she took a familiar adage that everyone can relate to: when one door opens, ... and gives it her own unique twist by applying it to industry brand relevant content. Last, Jonathan Adler. I love his account on Instagram. He's humorous, he's on brand, but he also, there's no doubt or question in your mind that he is an industry leader and an expert on the topic, but he just does it in a very fun, approachable, humorous way. On the left, he uses a little double meaning play on words here with the give your books a happy ending, and he does so without seeming like he's trying too hard, which is something that a lot of brands struggle with when they try to get a little playful. And then on the right, this one I pulled out just because it's unexpected. It's a thumb stopper, which is what we call, you know, something when people are scrolling through their Instagram feed and whatever they see causes them to stop scrolling. And then the content caption here makes you think and is a little play on home etiquette rules. So I really liked what he did here to engage and make the audience think a little bit. Okay, one more example, Nate Berkus here. He does a really good job of demonstrating, again, similar to Nate Berkus, but a little more straightforward, that he is an industry leader and expert, but he informs and describes what's happening in this image without sounding too highbrow, like he's talking down to anybody. He makes it seem like this look in the kitchen is achievable for anyone. And I love that he surprises at the end with a little on-brand humor that we've kind of expect in some of his posts. So in the next section, we're going to dive into audience and community engagement and just understand who you're talking to, how to speak to them, and then building those relationships and managing your reputation online. So first and foremost, how do you know who you're talking to on social? Seems like it could be obvious, but a lot of times who you think you're talking to is not actually who's following you or who you might be wanting to talk to achieve those specific business goals. A few ways to understand who you're talking to is to look at platform-specific demographic data. So that would just be generally information that Instagram offers about high-level trends of people that use the platform. We know that Instagram is a platform that skews heavily towards women, and that the majority of Instagram's audience falls within the age of 18 to 49. So that's something just at the most high level to keep in mind and use that as a foundation for understanding your audience. If we want to dive in a little further to that, we could also look at the app's free native analytics tools. Within the platform, there's Instagram Insights, and you can look at, you are able to access this if you have a business profile on Instagram. If you don't have your profile set up as a business profile, I would recommend making that optimization immediately because it really allows you to get those insights in a way that you wouldn't otherwise be able to have as a personal account. You can toggle that feature on just by going into settings within the app. When you do get into the insight sections, though, it's great wealth of information. You'll be able to understand things like gender distribution, age range distribution, locations of where your current audience is, and then times and days when your followers are most active. Lastly, another way to kind of round out the spectrum here of finding out who you're talking to on social is to tap into social listening tools. I've touched on this a little bit earlier, and we'll dive in further in a few slides. But social listening follows a 3-tier funnel. At the top would be a generic topic, in this case, interior design. And then underneath of that would be your brand. And underneath of that would just be a specific offering that pertains to your brand or a subtopic of interior design. So for a specific offering, it could be, for you, a free design consultation. So by targeting a general topic, your brand specifically, and then a service that you offer that's relevant to interior design, you're able to track what conversations are happening around these topics, who they're happening with, and really allow you to get a feel for who you're talking to. And if you are interested in using these tools, I recommend Hootsuite just because they have a really robust social listening feature within their platform that is free, and it gives you all those insights that you would with some of those paid tools. And then a few high-level bullets here that we will probably cover in just some more general discussions in the following slides. But once you know who your audience is, it's another question of who you're talking to or how you should talk to them. And again, this is all maintaining that brand voice that we discussed earlier, but just a key, the highest level here, just be authentic. That's what Instagram, this platform, is for. You want to be relevant, timely, make sure that what you're offering makes sense and pertains to your followers. Engage with them, be consistent, be relatable, and be a friend, not a business. This one I really cannot stress enough. People are not coming on social to connect with, a corporate entity. They want to talk to a friend. So make sure that you are that friend, you are that resource, that you're available to them, you entertain them, you offer value, and that at the end of the day, you're ultimately indispensable. They're going to come to you and only you to get that value that they know that you can provide. So once we've got all that in place, we want to delve in further into the relationship building aspect of fine-tuning your social audience. Today's consumers really base their perception of a brand on the meaningful moments they have with this, and with social media being a crucial touch point in customer relationships, we want to really reinforce the idea that every opportunity to interact with your audience on social counts. Social media, not just Instagram across the board, is really a key way to build those long-term connections and establish brand loyalty. So this is, one of those important reasons why we stress the importance of using your Instagram channel for more than promotion. Promotion should be the last thing on your mind when you're creating these captions. It's connection first, establishing a relationship, and then maybe down the road, once you've really established a rapport, maybe you can get that sale. But first, foremost, and primarily is creating those connections. And believe it or not, I mentioned this earlier, brands that build those customer relationships actually see positive growth for their business's revenues. It might not be as direct of a correlation. It takes a little time, but the ROI is a lot more valuable there. So when you're building a relationship with your audience, a few things to keep in mind is listen before you talk. Building customer relationships is all about delivering value. As I've said a few times now, if you can provide helpful information or entertaining content, people will want to connect with you. So a lot of times we see brands out there that are still focused on the what's in it for me approach to social, and that's not what you're here to do. If that sounds like something that you're doing, it's time to flip the script here and start by listening to your audience. The more you create content that your audience responds to, the more you can show them that you value their thoughts and feelings. And ultimately, that's one of the key components of relationship building on Instagram. Another one here is respond fast. I know, comments can get a little tedious replying to everybody here, but like I said, every opportunity to interact with your audience is something that you want to take advantage of. So if they're asking questions, if they're talking, if they're commenting, you want to get back to them and you want to get back to them fast. Listening is half the battle. It's the response to what you hear is what's really crucial here. And fast responses in some case studies that we've looked at really do improve revenue overall. There was an instance of on Twitter, certain airlines were replying to customers who were asking questions, complaining, not having the ultimate customer experience. And with some of these airlines that were tweeting back at their followers, we saw that their customers were willing to pay $20 more per fare at the end of the day. So just another kind of high-level stat here on how this can pay off for your brand. Also, when you're getting back to them fast, it shows that you care, and it builds it helps build your brand as one that customers can rely on. Next up, delighting your customer. Always look for ways to go the extra mile, whether it's, discounts, promos, sneak peeks, event invites, something that makes them feel special, exclusive. That's something that is going to really resonate with your audience and show them that you care. Another one that I think a lot of people in your industry are doing a lot already, but it's worth mentioning here, is embracing user-generated content, which is what UGC stands for. If you want your consumers to be loyal to you, you need them to see that you value their opinion. And one way to do that is by sharing their imagery on social. User-generated content really, tells your followers that you take their views and ideas into account when building your brand and that it's important to you. And, showing them and demonstrating that you value what they have goes miles. And it's also a really, really good way to build social proof here as well and generate sales. User-generated photos are 5 times more likely to convert customers down the road, just because it shows that you're not just there to force a sale, and because you're coming off as more authentic, it ultimately will drive that sale further down the funnel here. Lastly, in any communications that you do have with your social audience through this relationship building approach, you want to make sure that everything is personalized. Social is a really intimate place to build those connections between the brand and the audience. So you don't want to make it seem like you're just a bot or a robot AI messenger that's just chatting some pre-programmed response at them. You want to make sure everything is as personalized as possible. So that, when talking to consumers in DMs or any other channel on social here, you want to make sure to use your first name if possible. You can reference their profile if it's not immediately available. You want to, any comments or communications, you want to sign your personal name when you're closing out that communication. And then always at the end of the day, be friendly. Let your customers know that you're there for them. You're your friend. You're not just that corporate entity. And if you want to really make sure that your customers come back for more, once that conversation concludes, make sure that you let them know that, this is not the end. If they need something else down the road, you're there as an available resource for them should something come up. And then below here, I included a few statistics that I thought were interesting, just the power of social media to connect communities and how important it is for brands to show how much they understand and care. So last one, I think, is probably the one that's a big takeaway, just because I know that you are guys promoting your business, and that ultimately comes down to sales and revenue. In a survey that we pulled from, 76% of respondents were more likely to buy from a brand that they felt connected to on social media than a competitor. So again, those numbers really underscore the importance of making and establishing those relationships with your audience. So once you have those relationships in place, you also need to worry about not just your one-on-one relationship with your audience, but how do you manage your reputation on social media as a whole? This is a really important facet of your brand voice and your relationships. So let's just kind of walk through what exactly is your online reputation. As we all well know, the world has gone digital. Your brand name lives online. It's accessible anywhere in the world. So as a result, your brand's online reputation is really subject to what your audience and your customers think about it. So reviews, testimonials, social media posts, comments can really impact your reputation, either for better or for worse. And those can come from anywhere online. So just a few important steps as you're addressing reputation management as part of your overall strategy that I want to cover here. And first and foremost is really deciding what kind of reputation you want. Just the same as when we were establishing that brand voice, there's really no right or wrong answer to this, as it depends ultimately on your personal brand and how it aligns with your overall marketing goals as a business. So when deciding what kind of reputation you want, it's, do you want to be perceived as serious, someone with industry authority, or someone who's a little more easygoing? Once you decide what that direction looks like, then it'll help you appropriately deal with what your reputation is online. So, you could be Jonathan Adler, who really is known for those witty captions there, or you can be a little more serious, like industry expert, like Architectural Digest. Once you have that in place, then you can move forward with knowing how to manage your rep. Secondly, a good way to understand how to manage it is assessing what your current reputation is in the moment. There's plenty of tools that will help you assess what it looks like, but you really need to understand how people perceive you before tampering with your existing social media plan. If people think that you're doing an awesome job, don't touch what you're doing. You're on track. But if you find that there's a little negative sentiment, then you want to kind of dive further into that and pivot your content accordingly. So one tool that has a really good free version online is called Brand Grader. And you can sign up there, plug in your social, your website, your social media platforms, and it spits out a really nice report that kind of maps out some of the key sentiments that people feel about your brand online. And again, that tool is called Brand Grader. Lastly, a great way and seemingly obvious was to deliver, to reinforce your online reputation is to just make sure that what you're putting out there is quality content. People are not going to respond well if they don't feel like what you're putting out there is 100%. So make sure that your content understands and meets your audience's needs and expectations. Then the way that you can manage that via your reputation is just to monitor how audience responds to it and optimize accordingly. If you see that, they're not really liking what you're putting out there, just make those tweaks as needed. If you are seeing that those tweaks are necessary or some slight pivots based on whether it's at the Brand Grader report or otherwise, there's a few different key points to keep in mind when you're talking to your social audience and kind of trying to shift that perspective. First one would just be address the situation head on, respond professionally and directly. Since many customers really go to social for their customer service needs, there's going to be a good chance that you run into that you'll run into customers who are giving negative feedback. I cannot stress enough to fight the urge to get defensive if you're getting, there's some less than positive reviews or comments. Don't get defensive, don't get upset. Look at this as a positive experience. This is an opportunity to show how great you are as a brand, that you're seeing this negative content and you're not deleting it, you're not hiding it. Do not do that. You want to address it and let not only this person who's expressing negative sentiment know that you're here to change their views and help remedy the situation. But if you respond to that comment publicly on your profile, other users and followers can see how you handle the situation and ultimately reinforce the idea that you guys do really care about your audience. You are there to really make sure they have the ultimate experience. And so that's why we encourage clients to keep those negative comments if appropriate. There's certain situations where that may not apply, but use that as a way to reinforce your social media reputation as someone who cares. So that would be, maybe be direct and invite the customer to continue the conversation online. And that way you can handle the situation away from the scrutiny, but still demonstrate that social proof that you've taken steps to address the issue. Next one would be build a positive brand image. So post visually appealing content, but don't feel pressure to create and share unique content daily. Instead, you want to share curated content from other content creators to mix things up. Weekly posts are enough to safeguard your industry thought leadership and social media reputation without just posting just to post. Lastly, share your brand stories. I know a lot of you have your own business, you're small business owners, and so the fact that you've achieved that on your own is a brand story unto itself, and users want to hear that. They want to know your background. How did you get here? Why are you in this industry? What have you learned that they can learn from you? People appreciate stories, something that tugs at their emotional heartstrings or something they can relate to or something that they can aspire to. So think of Instagram rather not a channel to market your products or services so much, but as a place to tell your story and humanize yourself and establish those relationships. In whether that's just be, your background, your history, why you're there, or any corporate or any social responsibility efforts that you're employing. Just things that really spin your brand in a positive light without making it seem like this is forced. So moving on here, we're going to dive into some of the fun stuff, which is the content strategies. So we'll take a look at content calendar development, how to craft captions, which I know Risa is really excited about, and then different types of content that your brand can apply to these calendars. So first and foremost is planning that content calendar. You know, we all live and die by our Google Cal to keep our lives organized, helps us plan ahead, helps us stay organized, and that's exactly what this content calendar planner should do for your social or your brand on social. There's a lot of long-term benefits from planning ahead that all tie into stuff that we've already covered here. Social reputation, you know, building audience or building a rapport with your audience, and just overall how your content performs. So a few bullets that I wanted to touch on is just your how that content calendar can be such a useful tool is obviously, as you know, most other calendars function, helps you so that you're not going to miss any important dates. It'll help you plan ahead down the line to stay relevant. If there's like a national holiday, if there's an event, identifying that 1, 2, 3 months down the road will help you create really strong content ahead of time that resonates with your audience. Additionally, I've stressed consistency is something that's really important just generally when you're posting on behalf of your brand on social media. So a lot of times I know it's really easy to get caught up in the day-to-day. We're all busy. It happens. But if you're planning ahead with this content calendar and have everything locked and loaded 1 month ahead, that allows you to maintain that consistent posting schedule, and then consumers, followers know that at any point during the week, they can expect these certain types of posts from you. That will keep them coming back for more. Additionally, content calendar can help you diversify and balance your content. I know that a lot of times if we're just, you know, posting ad hoc, it's hard to keep track of what we posted the day before or last week or last month. By having everything mapped out in this cohesive calendar here, it really helps us diversify and balance content, as well as analyze what is and isn't working. So we'll get into diversifying that content in a few slides, but just at the highest level, that's something that making sure that you offer a little bit of everything for your audience and not just lean heavily into promotion or heavily into behind the scenes or heavily into graphics. You want to make sure that you're offering a little something to keep everyone interested and avoid follower fatigue. It'll help you elevate the quality of your content. Again, just based on knowing that you have time to plan out. You're not struggling to post something last minute just because it came up in a conversation that you had that day. You're able to create those, you know, videos, GIFs, whatever it is you want to be in. You're going to ensure that not only is the caption strong, but the quality of the creative itself is going to tie in as well. Okay, content planning tools. So I know that you're probably in that last slide, you're thinking, yes, easier said than done. Luckily, there's plenty of tools out there that can help make this planning your content really easy. And a lot of the options can be overwhelming, and ultimately what you choose will depend on what your unique needs are as a brand. You know, what channels or what platforms are you on? Is it just you, or is it a whole team that's touching these accounts? Do you require collaboration? Do you have budget for a paid version, or you just want free? You know, do you want just the basics stripped down? I want this to schedule, or do you want something that allows editing, all the bells and whistles? There's just so much out there, and what you choose will really depend on what is unique and checks all the boxes for your brand. I'm including a few examples here that I use at Power Digital, and then what I know are specific to Instagram as really highly recommended platforms as well that I've touched with my work with other clients. So Sked Social is a really good one for Instagram planning. It also gives you some analytics. It's I don't have the pricing offhand, but it's very well priced in terms of what it does offer. And it allows you to view your content in a calendar form, in a grid form, in a list form. And there's just a lot of different features that help you tackle that content calendar planning and look at it in different views that incite that creativity. Gain and Later are two other ones that have similar functionalities that have that scheduling, that approval, that team collaboration. And then one that I know that is really well received in the design and creative community is Planoly, which is also a really good content planning tool. One specific feature or tool that they have within Planoly is the Stories Edit, which allows you to like pick branded templates for consistent look and feel. You can customize these, and they ultimately help you kind of stay consistent with what your brand guidelines that you've outlined in those earlier slides that we covered through Stories Edit. So now we'll look at the different types of content here. There are a few different schools of thought on how to maintain that diversity and balance that I was mentioned earlier. One that was one of the first ones that I learned about when I got into social media was the 80-20 rule. And this is just a suggested content ratio of 80% of your content should be helpful and interesting and provide value, well, for every 20% of content that's selling your product. So I know this seems a little counterintuitive here, but you know, we're not on Instagram to just shove a sale in someone's face. We're here to create authentic experiences and relationships. And one of the best ways to do that is to make sure that you're offering, the content is offering more value than it is trying to sell. So within those, that 80-20 rule, we can also look at two different types of high-level posts that fall into that 80-20. The first one is our engagement driving posts. Those can be like quotes, lifestyles, you know, tag a friend, you know, motivational graphics. And these serve to boost brand awareness, increase engagement with your followers, and then, you know, users really, if the content resonates with the users, they'll be encouraged to share, and that ultimately helps grow your social following. So engagement driving posts would fall into that 80% bucket of helpful, interesting content. And then the traffic driving post, number 2 here, would be, you know, could be event posts, testimonials, products, promotions. These are all pieces of content that are driving traffic to the website, driving interest in your products or your services, and really creating warm traffic, which is as you move down the marketing funnel, cold, warm, hot. Warm gets you, creating warm traffic gets you that much closer to driving that point of purchase down the road, which is ultimately what, as a business owner, you'd like to do. So moving into a little more detail regarding the engagement driving posts versus traffic driving posts. Another point too, I do want to like hammer home, just because I know it is a little hard to digest this 80-20 rule, you know, why you're only providing value without doing something that directly has a return for your business. I want to, you know, underscore the fact that we're not here just to sell. Think about it as if you're buying a used car. You're not going to go on the lot there and buy the first car that the first sleazy salesman who approaches you offers up and said, this is what you got to do. You need to build rapport. You need to establish a relationship with him. Like anything that really helps you understand like what his motivations are, why this car that he swears by is like the one for you, before you're even going to think about trusting them enough to drive a purchase. So that's just an example that I like to offer clients in terms of making it easier to understand why we can't just outright just start blasting our followers with promotional content. So moving more into a detailed breakdown of the engagement driving versus traffic driving posts. Within that balance and diversified content, we want to look at engagement driving, which is that user-generated content we talked about. Non-branded links would be links that don't necessarily pertain to your brand, yet are of interest to your followers. So if you are, for instance, in alcohol brand and you're creating your content calendar for the month, a non-branded link that you could include would be, you know, how to style a bar cart in your living room. So it doesn't promote their product. It has nothing to do with the actual brand, but you know that if users are on your social profiles, it's because they have some sort of interest or affinity towards alcohol, which in turn, you know, there's a good chance that they have a bar cart. So it's just providing relevant related content without, you know, promoting your brand specifically. And then again, we've got that lifestyle imagery, educational content, anything that informs about the industry or teaching moments there, trends, tips, anything timely, holidays, events, quotes. We love a good branded graphic here to drive that engagement. And then thought leadership and interactive content. These could be Instagram stories, GIFs, whatever they may be. Interactive content is a really, really good way to drive engagement. And then just cruising through the traffic driving here as well. It's, again, those promotional, sales, product spotlights. Contests and giveaways are a good way to drive traffic without seeming super salesy. Again, client testimonials as well. If you've worked really hard to have a client respond in a certain way to the work you've done, that's great. You've earned that. Like, you should be sharing those client testimonials and offering further proof of your expertise. Influencer is imagery is another great way to employ traffic driving content. They can include links that link back to your site when they're sharing it on their social profiles. And then if you have a company blog, share those as Instagram stories, share those in posts. Like, that's really valuable content that you're providing. While it does tie directly back to your brand, unlike the non-branded links I mentioned, it still is something that you should be offering your users. And then again, any press hits, industry trends, or behind the scenes are all other really good ways to drive traffic. And again, it's all about maintaining that balance of 80-20. There's nothing wrong with, that traffic driving. It's a really important part of your strategy, but you just want to make sure that you're not leaning too heavily on that, because it's going to turn users off. So, and then on the right here are just a couple examples of different brands on social that have touched on some different ways to employ these engagement driving and traffic driving content. So we've got the really great Instagram story highlights up top, which show different events that the designer has been at. That graphic on the left is a styling tip trend and highlight, which is an Instagram story that does doubles as engagement and traffic driving, because it's providing that tip, that value, and informing the audience. But they've also got that sneaky little see more at the bottom, which if the user is interested, they can swipe up and be taken to the website. And then on the far right here is just a really beautiful Instagram grid that shows a nice balance of those quotes, those lifestyle imagery, and user-generated content. All right, and then I know that what we just reviewed were more like high-level content buckets. I did want to just throw this slide in here too, because it pertains specifically to the design community. And these are, maybe jot a few of these down, something that you want to try out in upcoming posts here. For when you're employing your new content calendar. But ones that I identified as being really good for the design community would be that before and after post, showcase your work or industry leading examples of other your peers to just prove that you offer a quality service, you are an expert, and or you're able to identify what quality services look like. How-to posts, engaging, informative. These will always really perform well because we're explaining how to do something, and your audience is ultimately there to because they're interested in what you have to talk about. So why don't you tell them what you're here, like what your background is, make those opportunities a learning moment. And then inspiration boards, this could be done on Pinterest, but you can also cross promote them on Instagram. So create boards that inspire your readers, that speak to different facets of your design background and areas of expertise that will inspire your readers. Behind the scenes, you guys as a design community get to spend your days, in beautiful homes, talking to people, connecting with your clients, and ultimately working with them to figure out how to make their home uniquely theirs. And I think that by showing how you interact with your clients in that way, to your audience, it really humanizes the brand and lets people relate to you. You're a real person. You're not just a Instagram profile. There's someone behind the post, behind that content. And by incorporating this behind the scenes posts into your strategy, you'll be able to drive that point home. Case studies, again, like I said, you guys work really hard. You have, luckily, your work is very aesthetic, so there's something tangible to show off, and case studies are a perfect way to do this. You people, should be seeing the results of your efforts here. Again, timely topics. These are always really fun ones, like patio furniture trends for summer. If we're hitting June, that's something that's a no-brainer. You want to show that you not only are on top of what's the trends are for the season, that you're current, and then how, as your background and expertise, will apply that and share that with your users.
So we are running a little bit low on time, but we will be sharing this information so everybody, you can kind of graze through this. And I want to make sure that we get to the social ROI part, because I think the metrics is the stuff that people don't look at. We will be sharing this with everybody.
Cool. All right. Well, then I will skip through these, and you guys can reference those when they share the deck. And then we'll get into the thick of it, is the crafting the captions here. So, obviously Instagram is a very visual platform, but choosing the right image is not, where the challenge ends there. The caption is equally, if not more important, because where you're personifying your brand, you're giving, your photo a voice. And so you should be thinking about what you're saying as much as about what you're showing here. So a few tips that are super important that if anything that you can take away is crafting a caption here is something that I would really hope that everyone has a better understanding of when we, conclude the webinar. But great caption will add context, it entertains, and it compels your followers to take an action. And so to do that, a few things that you can emphasize or apply to your caption crafting is, putting the key and important details first. The maximum character count for an Instagram caption is, really a formality. However, you've probably seen in the feed that captions cut off in a user's feed after 3 or 4 lines of text. So it doesn't mean you have to keep your captions shorter, although, if when in doubt, brevity is the default, I would recommend. You should make sure that you front load your information. So if it is a long caption, the important message that you want to convey is able to be viewed in those first three lines. So that would be like, the high level message, any call to action, and, leave those hashtags, leave the mentions or any extraneous information to the end of the caption, because if they're interested, they'll click see more and they'll get to it. But you want to make sure that you pull them in with the most engaging information at in the first 1 or 2 sentences. So an example of that would just be, love the before and afters we've been sharing. Tomorrow morning, tune in for my best home makeover yet, ... That's literally where it ends, as the availability of Instagram to preview that caption. If you save that for the end, they would never know that you were about to reveal tomorrow some really cool industry insights into your home makeovers here. So keep that front loaded, or keep your captions front loaded with the information that is most important to conveying the context of your image. Second one would be include a call to action. The best way to increase the share potential of your Instagram post and engage your followers is to include some sort of CTA in the captions of your photos. Ultimately, we want our followers to stop and do something when they see our content, not continue to mindlessly scroll and, forget about us as soon as the next image pops up from somebody else. One really good way to do that is to include a verb in your caption. Inclusion of verbs really increases the likelihood of them stopping, paying attention, and taking action afterwards. Some good or examples of some CTAs would be to ask a question. Why are you motivated? What are you motivated about this Monday? Tell us in the comments below. Another one would be to direct them to a link in your bio, or ask them to swipe up if it's an Instagram story, and encourage them to visit a new landing page or a new project highlight that you've included on your site. That would be an example of what we talked about earlier, which is that traffic driving. Another CTA could be, encouraging them to tag a friend. It's Feng Shui Friday again, tag a friend who'd love the vibes of this great living room. You're tagging somebody in it. It's encouraging engagement, and it's also getting your content in front of more people when your followers ultimately do take the action to tag people in the captions. Next one is hashtags. This is a personal pet peeve of mine when brands put 700 hashtags and jam it into the bottom of their caption. While hashtags do serve a purpose, and that is, to tie conversations of different users into one stream. They are really useful in connecting users as well who aren't otherwise connected to one another. But sorry, lost my train of thought there. Less is more in this case. If you're going 30 hashtags here, not only is there a very good chance that the effectiveness of those hashtags are just not really there, but it also comes off as super spammy. And again, in managing your brand reputation there, you don't want to come off as a spammy brand. You want to come off as someone that they trust. 30 hashtags, 15 hashtags, that's going to turn off users. keep them short, keep them effective, and keep them actionable. So make sure that you're really you really think they're well thought out, purposeful hashtags when you do include them. And again, it's not necessary to include them in every post, but if you do, just make sure that you're not just adding them for the sake of adding them. Again, back to our brand voice is just when you're crafting captions, just maintain that authenticity. Be true to the platform and be true to who you are as a brand persona. That one we kind of touched on already, but we just want to make sure that we're authentic because that's really how you're going to build those connections with your audience. If your voice changes from post to post, if it's not really it's not platform appropriate, users are not really going to see that as some post that they want to engage with. Another recommendation here is use emojis if you like, and if that is on brand with the persona that you've developed. As is with hashtags, use sparingly, less is more here, but it does kind of add that something extra if it makes sense for your brand. It infuses a little personality into your caption and helps it stand out in the feed as they're scrolling. You could grab their attention by adding an emoji at the front of the caption or using it to replace actual words. However you decide to incorporate it, if at all, just remember, sparingly is more effective here. And then stay relevant and offer value. Your posts should make sense. They should be timely. You should not be talking about something that happened a while back unless it's, for a specific purpose. And you want to make sure that with those relevant content, it serves the purpose of showing that you're current, that you understand what's on trend, what's happening, and then just offer value in terms of, teaching, engaging, entertaining. Lastly, and this is honestly I came across this in a meeting recently. A friend explained this to a client, and I thought it was a really good way to phrase this, but it's just be a friend first, a salesperson 10th. Like, you want to make sure that before you even think about trying to sell them, like your customer something, you are their friend. And you've got a long way to go before you may cross that threshold of being able to make a point of sale or service. But it's definitely friend number one, salesman number 9, 10, 11. That's down the road. Right now, we're just focusing on captions that present yourself as relatable, authentic, accessible, value-adding friend here. And then I outlined a few different examples of do's and don'ts and really try to tie them into your industry here. So I'll kind of read through these and then show you why I like, or what the good and what the bad is here. From left to right, it's just the do is, I absolutely adore this project that Flax Studio so bravely designed. The balance of color and materials makes my toes curl. The hashtag at the end as well is something that they incorporated that was branded. The make my toes curl part is really kind of makes you do a double take. It's super cute and engaging, and it's like, makes you be like, oh, maybe I should be as engaged and intrigued by this design. So with that specific language here, what I really like is that it personifies, it emotes, and just with that specific use of language there, it really makes the user want to like stop scrolling and be like, did I miss something? Like, why is it that like this account is so intrigued by this example here, and makes them re-examine the content a little more. What we don't want to see is a very generic caption to tie this in. I've seen this happen a lot, and I think that because you guys, as a creative design community, have such visual, beautiful content to work with on a daily basis, that you should create compelling captions that match. And you guys are at an advantage in that way for this platform. So make sure that you, if you're sharing great images, that caption needs to be on par as well. So living room color inspo of the week. I've seen a lot of really basic captions like this. That's feels like something that you'd read in a textbook or something. It's just very dry. It doesn't make me want to keep reading. Doesn't want to make me see what other posts that this account is sharing. It just lacks that kind of something extra that personifies the brand. So, do engage, do be on brand, do use language that's really going to catch the eyes of your user. Don't rely on just kind of standard, basic, like dry captions that don't exemplify who you are as a brand on social. The next one here plays on a little pop culture of a different generation here, and then incorporates a little unique style with those forward slashes here. Pretty in pink. The only thing that could make this shot better would be to have a young Molly Ringwald perched on the bed. What do you think, guys? Would you hire this color connoisseur? So I like this one because it engages, it asks questions, it's styled with those forward slashes, which are seen across a lot of captions in this account. So you know what to expect, and that also drives home that familiarity. So anytime that a user is scrolling through the feed and they see the forward slashes, they know that they're getting a post from this account. They also make this post relatable by asking what do you guys think. It's bringing in the audience. It's using that we language, not that you language, and making it something that the audience, even though they're not there, can talk about and discuss. A don't that I would use in this example would be, I see a lot of brands do this where they try to be, it's a misappropriated use of trying to be, or like way to be relevant. So they'll jump on a lot of like trending holidays or events that don't really pertain to their brand, and they're only jumping on because they're seeing other brands do it. One example here would be, in honor of International Women's Day, here's a pink goals bedroom for all the ladies out there who love pink. Is just kind of taking two things that don't really relate, pink bedroom and then International Women's Day. It's a really big stretch there on how those correlate, and it's almost like they're just trying a little too hard to be relevant of the moment. So make sure that if you are jumping in on those kind of timely holidays, that the creative and the messaging there makes sense for your brand and actually ties things together. On the right side, the final example here, this one is really good because they employ branded hashtags here, which makes this post searchable and makes that all of these Friday finds, which is a series that this account would use, is searchable, curates them all into one place, and then it makes the content and the caption itself is just fun and consistent. And you kind of feel like you're talking to a friend rather than an account. So the caption here is, this is one of my favorite angles of this kitchen. Just to the right of that phenomenal vintage fridge is the coffee bar. Beyond the coffee bar is the office. Coffee should never be too far away from your workspace. Am I right? And then phase Friday finds. So right there, it just kind of relates to the audience and that we all need that coffee fix. And then ties in those the emojis as well, which we talked about earlier. And then again, those branded hashtags. What we don't want to see is what I explained about being a big pet peeve of mine is just an onslaught of hashtags that are too generic and just kind of come off as like very spammy without any true message being conveyed here. I will pull out some of the key points here and make sure that we get through the remainder of these slides. Like I mentioned earlier, measuring the success of your campaigns is ultimately the best way to see how your content is performing. We would use key performance indicators or KPIs to track this campaign success. What KPIs you'd want to measure really depend on, or to include in your reporting, is those metrics that help you determine the following questions. Are you engaging with the right audience? Does your content reach the right people? How many of your followers end up inquiring about your service or brand? And then down the road, how many of them actually convert to customers? So if there's a metric that answers any of these, and some will answer all, some will answer a few, you want to be understanding and measuring what those KPIs are. So diving into what those are specifically, engagement is a really very important way to track our social ROI here. I like to describe social media engagement as a long-term relationship, sort of like a marriage. If you think about it, a relationship takes time and dedication, the ability to think about foreseeable future to ensure that everyone's happy. So when it comes to metrics, engagement should be a primary area to focus on. Clicks, something you posted a blog on your Instagram story and you want to see how many people clicked out. That would be those traffic driving links. Likes, again, those are very basic and sometimes they can be seen as a vanity metric, but ultimately, the more likes your posts are generating, the higher possibility your brand is reaching larger audiences, and that's a really great sign. It means that your fans are attracted to the content that they find valuable. Shares, It's always good to know that your fans are sharing your work. It shows your content was valued by them. And, in short, shares are a very reliable indicator of your content quality. And then again, brand mentions, that goes back to that social listening. If your handle is mentioned or tagged, it shows the people are talking about your brand. That is, ultimately really great to have your brand being talked about. And if it's negative, we're going to use that as an opportunity to manage your reputation and turn that into a positive spin here. Next would be reach. So who is your content reaching, and how far does your content really go in terms of viewership? This is a question that all social media marketers must ask themselves, why is reach an important metric to track? So reach indicates a variety of different things, from how far your posts are traveling and the number of eyes that have read it. So in that sense, unto its own, that's a really good reason why we should be tracking it. But also, reach is a measure of your potential audience size and range, not just who it actually did see. And it also demonstrates the range of your conversions. So just unlike engagement, reach is more of an estimate, but it's still a crucial metric to track here. And it's ultimately part of our holistic view of campaign success overall. So leads is another really important one. Significant challenge for media marketers is identifying how your content is generating sales. This doesn't get said very often, but social media can be one of the best sales tools to connect with leads and prospects, drive sales, and close deals. Any salesperson, knows that an essential stage in the sales process is establishing that relationship first and getting to know your prospects. So really wanting to know how you're able to track and drive those leads. Why should you consider tracking leads through your social networks? In a recent report, 74% of shoppers made their buying decisions based on what they saw on social media. So again, social is a really strong sales tool. It's just different than your traditional channel of sales here. Lastly, we have conversions. So customer conversions are critical to the marketing success, and no strategy is really complete here without measuring how many customers you've acquired. So, think about it. Is there really a better feeling than getting your customers to take action based on the great social media content you've created? That's just such a fulfilling, everything comes full circle. You've established that relationship, and you've eventually brought that into something that puts value back into your business. So conversions can be tracked by UTM links, which is just a custom link. And I will share these there's a tool that you can get these through. But anytime you're linking to any of your content on social media, you want to use a UTM link, which allows you to find where that traffic came from in Google Analytics. So it's basically an implementation that brings everything full circle and understands where those conversions are happening. Once you have put these in place, ultimately the work happens for you at this point, and you can just continue to connect with customers and create the content that is working and converting. So final points here. At the end of the day, social media and promoting your business, it really all comes down to understanding who your audience is, and everything kind of ties into it after that. So just focus, if you can take anything away, focus on providing content that attracts your audience, keeps them engaged. I honestly think that's the best social media advice I can give you. And once you get your audience engaged with your brand, you'll start to understand further who's most interested and ready to purchase your product or service. So don't forget to pay attention to which social channels really produce the best conversion rates. And then also just focus on the quality, captions, content, visuals, and that brand voice, and tie it all together into a package that's going to make you look like a really expert and authority on social media.
And a rock star. Thank you so much, Mackenzie. I'm sorry to you guys for going over a little bit. I do want to ask a couple questions. Some of the questions I've answered, I'm going to go back and show our faces so you can see us. And Mackenzie, I'm going to go ahead and read a couple questions to you and see if we can shoot through these questions. So one question was, can you share some tips for getting people to see? I feel like when I ask people to tag us, no one responds.
So user-generated content, I would say it's definitely, you can run a campaign where you incentivize this kind of shared content, where it's upload a post for a chance to win a free consultation, or for a chance to, whatever you are able to offer the users. It could be a contest, a giveaway. That's something that we like to do a lot to generate that UGC. Just asking them outright, because it is kind of a high ask to so to speak, compromise their profile by sharing a photo that is motivated for another reason. So a lot of times the best way to get them to share it is to incentivize it in a certain way.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. How do you recommend responding to negative comments that aren't even about your business? A similar business with a very similar name to ours did some bad work, and now we sometimes have their clients writing bad reviews about us online. I have tried to gently clarify that we are different companies, but they don't believe me. Do I just give up and let the trolls troll?
I mean, I wouldn't give up, because ultimately that is kind of, sullying your brand name. It sounds like what you're doing is on the right track of how you should be addressing the situation. You want to remedy that, the miscommunication there, and let them know that it's the wrong brand. And then maybe, I think you definitely don't want to delete or hide them, but I think it sounds like what you're doing is the right direction here. If there's anything you can do to tailor or tweak the messaging that you're using to convey this miscommunication and further clarify, that would be my biggest advice. It might just not be as straightforward as these customers need.
Or so if it gets really bad, think about changing your business name if it's really affecting your business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how necessary is it to have the creator of the company overview each and every Instagram post caption? We want to make sure, and my favorite topic is Instagram's captions, if anybody can tell. So I'm glad that you're asking this. We want to make sure that we are carrying over their voice, but not to the extent that it's taking away from other things that they need to do. Where is the middle ground?
So I think that that's really where that brand voice and guidelines come into play. I worked at an agency a couple years ago where every single tweet had to go through 5 different layers of C-levels. And by the time that the tweet was approved to go live, it was old news. The trend had passed, it was gone. So the solution there was to kind of create those brand guidelines, voice and tone, and make something that make sure those brand guidelines are approved by the ultimate person who this content is supposed to be coming from. If they sign off on those brand guidelines, then they should feel a little more comfortable about what you're putting out there, and not have to oversee and give the go ahead on every single individual piece of content. They should ideally, if you guys build these guidelines together, trust that you have a holistic understanding of what falls into those guidelines, and know that anything that you put out at that point is going to fall within what you've mapped out together.
That makes sense. Okay, last 2 questions and then we'll let you guys go. As interior designers, we use many colors in our work. Oop, the question just popped down. We use many colors in our work and we want to show our work. I think it would be pretty hard to stick to a limited palette as a style guide or kind of a cohesive feed. What would you suggest? Somebody else asked this very similar question of saying, how do I curate my feed if like my projects are kind of all over the place?
So I do that with one client. It's a very similar situation, and you can kind of use like week by week, maybe clump the posts in sort of color themes. So like maybe lighter colors week 1, move into more like warmer colors week 2, and just do it not post by post, but more section it out into like week by week, and make sure that they tie in that way. Or if that just isn't going to work because your colors really are all over the place, you can create branded filters in Lightroom or Photoshop. If you Google branded Lightroom presets after this presentation, there's a lot that you can download online. And that way you can just apply those directly to all the photos that you're uploading. So even if they aren't the exact color or like that same color scheme, at least they'll all have the same filter on them, which ultimately achieves that cohesive look and feel.
That's great. Okay, last question. I don't want to stir up a pot because we could have a whole session on just this one question, but just really quickly in 30 seconds, if you can answer it, Mackenzie, can you talk about why you get a slew of followers after a post on Instagram and then a big drop off the next day or so?
I guess I would need a little more context to answer that. It depends if you're using, I don't know if this is an example of something that happened specifically to you or something that you've seen. But there are people that buy likes to make it seem like this post is performing really well, and then those likes will drop off because they were not guaranteed likes. They were purchased and ultimately served a temporary function. But it is kind of hard to answer that question specifically without a little more context. But yeah, sorry if that wasn't like totally answered everything.
Yeah, I think it's true. There's also like a lot of bots and people buying following and followers, and you really want to build an organic audience. So there's people following and unfollowing. So I think that's why maybe you could see like a big drop off in there. I don't know, you're the expert, but I think that growing your following is 100% like a whole other separate topic that we can cover. We try to include as much. Mackenzie, if you'll just scroll to the last slide of your deck that shows the wrap up. Oh, that is your last slide. Sorry. I didn't see that slide, but yeah, we will make sure that we get you over the deck, that we have the recording for you guys. If you are interested in learning more about Ivy, go ahead. I'll pop in my email. It's resetivy.co. If you have questions for Mackenzie, she shared her email as well. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. So much content, Mackenzie. Thank you so much. I don't even know where to begin because there's so much good content, but I would say follow her wrap up and really don't let Instagram overwhelm you, and don't just post to post. Really be mindful about what you're putting into the atmosphere, because at the end of the day, you are your brand and you really want to make sure you're sending out a clear message. Right, Mackenzie? Did I learn something today?
Yeah, you could have given that whole presentation yourself. That was amazing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Mackenzie. Thank you, Power Digital, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.